know what? I don't traditionally think of this as a fall color, but it just really looks so nice with these other two colors. And I think it really does look fallish on this card. So I'm using Bermuda Bay, crushed curry, and pumpkin pie. So we are going to start with, believe it or not, a piece of white cardstock. And I like to work with my light inks first. So the lighter the ink, it gets done first. And I use these little sponge daubers. You can use a sponge too. Let me just get a sponge for you so you know what I'm talking about. You can use one of these sponge pieces if you want to. I like the daubers because I can get a lot of ink on them and have really good control. You could use blending brushes as well, but they cover a bigger area, so it's harder to keep the color smaller in smaller chunks. So that's why I like daubers for this technique. So I'm just going to swirl some on here, and it doesn't matter if it is not a nice even tone. So you can see it's darker in the middle and it's kind of splotchy. That's okay. It really is okay. So don't worry about that. Now you want to use some colors that are pretty bright with Joseph's coat. It really makes, you know, the black really makes everything pop. So you really want some bright colors. I'll show you in a little bit what happens when you use something that maybe is just a little too muted. Let me close up this ink pad. Then I'm going to go to pumpkin pie. And I just sort of go in around that, and you can blend it in a little bit. Overlap it with the other color there. And maybe put a splotch in here. There really is not a lot of rhyme or reason. You can even use 4 colors. You're filling the whole thing with color. Now I'm going to use my Bermuda Bay and fill in some of these other areas. And again, it's okay if I roll over the other ones a little bit. These two don't blend as nicely as the other ones, obviously, because it's an entirely different color. So we're putting ink all over this card, which means that there is a certain level of dampness to it. So before you take the next step, you really should let it dry for a while. You can try to hit it with the heat tool too. However, it really, you know, you really probably want to set it aside. So I've actually created this, and I'll be able to use this some other time, but I've actually got one already done. Oh, see, here's my done one. Looks different. This one looks a little bit lighter, and it's because it's drier. The colors will lighten a little bit as it dries. Now, remember I said you want to use some bright colors. Here's what happened. I thought I would take a cue from the Blackberry Beauty Designer Series paper, and I used rich raspberry and cinnamon cider, and I'm not sure if this is crushed curry or bumblebee, but these colors theoretically look nice and fallish and really pretty, but this is what I got when I embossed over it. So it's too dull for me. You really want to have brighter colors. So pick your colors wisely, that's what I say. Brights are really, really fabulous to work with. All right, so this is our dry one. Now, I don't want to touch it too much because I am going to be embossing with it. Now, I have this thing called an embossing buddy that Stampin' Up! No longer sells, but you could use a dryer sheet too. You want to just use something that's going to take some of the static and some of the moisture. Now, there's no moisture in this, but there could be static because we're coming along the dry season. But a drier sheet will also help remove some of that. And then you're going to emboss. So for this particular card, I have used the art gallery set. Not typically a set I would pick for fall probably, although honestly, you change the colors, you change the feeling. And I really just used one stamp here for the image. I used this floral one right here. I'm going to mount that on a block here. Now, when you are stamping on this inked up sheet, it's a little hard to tell where you've stamped. So kind of keep in mind where you've been stamping. Now I know that I really want one right in the center. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in the center. Again, I'm trying not to touch too much around it. And then I'm going to move it around a little bit, change my angle on my stamp. And if I wonder where things are, I can pick it up and try to pick up the glisten in the light. So I can see the tail is right here. It really does get a little hard. And sometimes it just depends on the colors that you're using as well. But I want nice crisp images, so I don't really want to cover, stamp one on top of the other. So now you're going to bring in some embossing powder. And I've had this embossing powder for a really, really long time. Embossing powder really does go pretty far. And you're just going to pour it all over the card. Tap off the excess. I'm flicking some pieces off that might be stuck to places they shouldn't be stuck to. Yeah, it looks pretty good, I guess. It's hard. It's really, really hard to see right now. I know. Sorry, but it's the nature of the beast. You're using a clear ink and you're using a somewhat clear powder. It looks a little white, but it's really clear. Now I'm going to take my heat tool out. And I'm going to use the high setting because I'm embossing. So our heat tool comes with two settings. My last one that Stampin' Up! Made did not. This one has two settings, and I'm going to use the high one because I want to emboss. And I'm just going to heat an area until I see that the embossing powder has melted. It kind of disappears. That's when I know it's melted. There we go. You won't necessarily see anything. What you don't want to do is leave it in a spot too long. If you leave it too long, it will melt into the paper and then it won't be raised anymore. I do find that with this heat tool, it doesn't get quite as hot as my last one did, which is sort of a blessing because I think the hotter that it is, the more it crinkles your paper. So you can kind of see where it melts, it gets a little bit of a darker image. I need to rotate it before I burn my fingers. All right. And if you think there's an area that looks like it's just, you wish there was something there, you can go back and stamp again. So let me turn this off for a second. So I can see that I probably could use a little bit up there, maybe a little something over on these sides. So I'm just going to get this back out again. And I'm really not going to do much. I'm going to take a little bit right there and just a hair right there, and probably just get a bit of the stem up there. We'll see how that works. Sometimes it's just playing around. Let's see. Sheila wants to know if I'm using the thick white cardstock. I am not, actually. You can use the thin or the thick. The thick will resist curling better. But I am not using that. Now I've forgotten where I stamped. That's what happens Friday Night Live after a work week. Brain kind of goes dead. All right, let's see if I can find these spots. Now I don't really want to go over where I've already embossed, because again, that's just going to set it right into the paper too much. So I've embossed it over here too, I think. And then I need to do right up here. All right, I think that's pretty good. I think I got everything. And that just takes a second. Now, can anybody tell me what embossing powder is made of? I'll wait. See how smart you guys are. I gotta see if I can call up my comments. Here we go, here are my comments. Yes, Sheila, this is clear embossing powder, even though it looks white. All right, so I'm gonna put this away while I'm waiting for you to guess what it's made out of. Something that melts. Why do my comments still keep going away? All right, well, let's see. Nicole has no clue. Well, it is plastic. Little bitty pieces of plastic. Plastic pellets, there you go. Elaine for the win. All right, now I'm gonna get my Memento Black out. And I have a sponge for this, and I like the sponge because it allows me to rub over things a little bit better. And I ink it up, and I'm just rubbing. And the embossed area resists the ink. So the more black you put on, the darker it will be, obviously. My ink pad probably could use a little re-inking too, but you will see, and you probably couldn't tell by my card that I posted, there is a little bit of the rainbowness coming through underneath the black. Again, the more black that you put in there, the less you'll notice it. But I find it really doesn't detract very much from it, so I'm good with it. No two of these will be alike because you're really just randomly putting down the color. And then again, you're kind of randomly stamping because you can't really see where you're stamping. So here we have our top piece. Sometimes your fingers get a little inky. That's all right. Little ink hurt nobody, right? All right, so one more step before we're ready to create this card, and that's you just want to take a cloth. This one gets all sorts of ink. It got really dirty during the alcohol technique. And you just want to kind of buff the embossed areas. That will just brighten up those pieces a little bit. See, it takes some of the black ink off the top of the embossing. And just brightens it right up. So there we go. Look at that. Pretty, if I do say so myself. All right. So Elaine just said that she's never seen this technique before. You've been stamping a long time, Elaine. Really? Wow. Well, I'm glad I could teach you something new. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take a piece of coordinating cardstock. So this is crushed curry, and I cut it just 1/8 of an inch larger than this piece. So this piece is actually 4 by 5 1/4. So this is 3 7/8 by 5 1/8. I wasn't paying attention. I slipped my tape off, my tape runner off. You know what? I'm not even gonna bother with it. I'm just gonna use my glue, my green glue, which I prefer anyways. So I was trying to use Stampin' Seal Plus, and I really like that only for boxes. I don't really like it as much for cards. So line that up. Here we go. And then you need a card base of basic black. Now, if you are thinking ahead, which I wasn't, you can actually make this top piece to be slightly larger than you need it, and then you just slice off a little bit and you can decorate the inside with it. That would have been smart. But we're not going for smart tonight. We're just going for pretty on the outside. So just look how much that pops here. And all we need to do now is embellish it. So I cut a piece of crushed curry, and I cut a piece of Bermuda Bay, and the crushed curry is a little bit thinner. I probably didn't even measure it, and it's a little bit longer than the crushed curry piece. I just want it to stick out a little bit. I'm going to use the I'm Thinking of You that's in this stamp set. Let me get my block out over here. I'm stamping in the Memento Black. And I'm going to attempt to put this nicely on my crushed curry. You know, I wasn't with you all last Friday night. Well, I was with some of you last Friday night live, but not on Friday Night Live. Feels like I've been away so long, and it really hasn't been that long. 2 weeks, right? Something like that. Maybe 3 because of camping. But I've missed you. So I'm happy to be back on my Friday night. And now that it's getting cooler and it's not summer out, I suspect a lot of you will be in a lot more on Friday night and can take in my Friday Night Lives actually live. I'm just going to adhere this so that the ends are about the same. It just sticks down a little bit. That's what I love about the green glue, is you can move it a little bit still. And I think dimensionals would be nice for this. I don't think I had those on my original, but I'm going to have them on this one. Thank you, by the way, to my customers who made Celebration so great for me. It was such a fun time, and I hope you all are enjoying your products. And I know there's a little bit of a back order for those of you that ordered late in the game, but hopefully those things will come in very soon. And then the last thing is, I think these brushed metallic adhesive dots are awesome. I love the colors. I think you've got like a brass, a bronze, and a maybe pewter, probably. Is that pewter? I don't know. I think because there's a lot of gold in here, I'm going to use the brass. So I'm just going to put a couple. You know my magic number, right? 3. Well, let's see where we're going to go. Let's fill in that spot. And let's take a smaller one and right up here maybe. And so there's the outside of our card. And I will just put I'm going to do the inside some other time when I didn't cut for the inside, so sorry. But that is the Joseph's coat technique. It really is not that hard. Just a couple things you want to watch out for. You want to make sure that you are not touching it all over as you're working with the paper, because your embossing powder will stick to where your fingerprints were. You also don't want to emboss right after you've inked the base. You want to set this aside to dry. Overnight would probably be ideal, but definitely, you know, a good amount of time. You can hit it with this if you want to, but really just let it dry sufficiently, and then you can really work. And you want to use some bright colors, and that really makes it pop.